My name is Ardem Patapoutian, and I'm a researcher in biological sciences and medicine. And I work on how you sense touch and other forms of pressure. So most cells in our bodies communicate through chemicals, hormones, neurotransmitters, but touch is very unusual, right? Because it's physics, right? So when I touch, this indentation has to be felt by a molecule and turned into language that the neurons, the nervous system will understand. And so the way they do this, there's this very fast signaling molecule called ion channels that they're either closed or open. When they're open, ions come into the cell and start, it's like an electric switch that turns the neuron on. But this ion channel has to be activated by not chemicals, but pressure. So it was known for decades that such a molecule existed that helps us sense touch and pain. But what the identity of the molecule was, nobody knew. And so that's what my lab did. They found ion channels that sense pressure, others that sense temperature. So this is how you communicate with the outside world. And of course, it's a kind of a basic science, but has really applications that we're exploring in pain, blood pressure sensing, all kinds of other potential applications. So, sometimes when you open complicated electronics, there's like a blue wire, red wire, yellow wire. It's the same thing. We call it labeled lines. And one neuron that specializes in sensing heat is red, right? And has a channel that's activated by hot. Another neuron that's blue, let's say, has this mechanosensor. And so your brain knows the wiring. So if a blue neuron fires, you say, oh, I'm feeling touch in this location. If it's, hot neuron says, oh, it's hot, I should take off my hands. So each neuron kind of expresses, we call it, different receptors for these different modalities. And that's how you know what are you experiencing. So these mechanical sensors are expressed a lot of different places, but they're usually not in the brain. You feel it in the skull, but in the brain you have no sense of touch. It certainly changes your life. It's one of the biggest, I think, recognitions of a scientist that you can imagine. And it's really touching because it's not just for you, it's all your collaborators. I've had, tens of students and postdocs in my lab who do the actual work, the whole field collaborators. So it's a celebration of science. And what I also find it very special is that beyond the science, it helps us connect to people who might not normally know what we're working on as scientists. So it's an opportunity to, portray science to the general public. And I really appreciate that and have learned to make the most of it. There's also so many other elements. I'm Armenian of origin, and I grew up in Lebanon. And it so happens that I was the first person from Lebanon and the first person of Armenian origin to win any Nobel Prize. So this actually became such an important thing for Armenians and Lebanese. They celebrated with me, and I get still so many letters from kids who, for example, Armenian in high school saying, I never thought I could do something like this, but I see you did it. You look like me, so maybe I can do it too. So that's actually, I find that like one of my kind of goals is to, as an immigrant myself to the United States and someone who started with very little, I kind of feel like now it's my job to kind of be an example to young kids who want to do this and don't come from Ivy League schools or parents who are scientists or anything like that. So I take that part seriously as well. feel pressure actually. It's the opposite. I feel liberated because, in a sense, the accomplishment is looked at as if you've reached the pinnacle of your thing. So for me, that removes pressure. That I don't need to achieve anything. I do this because I love it, and I do it to help others. And so yeah. So a lot of people ask me this. Is it more pressure? I actually feel less pressure. The simplest way I can put it is they're the electric switches. I already mentioned this. It's what turns on your neurons and your brain, making you aware of your environment. Imagine if you had no sense of touch or no sense of temperature. Your brain by itself cannot do anything. It needs to get information from outside, and these are the sensors in a way that allows us to do it. What's also interesting is that these are biological molecules, but there's so many fields are related to this. There's a field of haptics, which people are now trying to find out what's the best way to artificially sense touch, which could help people who are paraplegic, for example. They're even used in video games to vibrate your hand and give you the artificial sense of touch. And at the end, we do it for the discovery of just intellectual curiosity. But of course, it's always excellent when you can translate this to work to help humanity some way. And we're working on some of these for future pain medications. I think there's too many people doing lots of different things. One of the things I strongly believe in is, and the Ray Jaime does this very well, is reward scientists for doing basic science. And I think the key here is that we don't know where the next medical breakthrough is going to come from. I think this is the most important message to the lay public, is that what works best in science is to fund basic science, curiosity-driven science, and the translational stuff will come, but you cannot predict it. In most cases, when you get a cure, you don't actually get it from someone studying a disease. It usually comes from someone studying a basic biological question, and then they find out, this has something to do with this disease and I can help cure it. So the public has to realize that investment in science is the best way to help humanity in the future to come up with the future medicine. Yeah, I think it's wonderful. I think Spanish science from Ramon y Cajal and on has great tradition of doing great science, and I know that the funding for science is okay but can be better, and I think there's no better way to encourage science in Spain than to highlight local scientists, people who are doing awesome science in Spain, and this again allows them. They have a very distinguished jury, they get lots of press, and so it highlights great science being done in Spain and hopefully encourages more investment in science. I often say, my career was, I thought I was going to medical school, and I worked in a laboratory just to get a letter of recommendation for medical school. But I ended up falling in love with doing science. It became my passion. And I love it so much that I often say I would do this even if they weren't paying me. And I think the best thing I can tell kids learning in school is find that passion. The luckiest person is the one that loves their work. It's not a chore. You're not going to work, I have to go to work. Instead, it's, yes, I can't wait to do this. Not everyone, unfortunately, can achieve this, but it's a wonderful goal. Whether it's science, whether it's engineering, whether it's flying planes, whatever your passion is, find something you love and dedicate yourself to it. And then great things will usually happen. This is not just only in Spain. I think we all compare government funding to science to other things, including defense and all this, and we get such a smaller percentage. I could easily make the point that investment in science is one of the best investments a government can do. And so I think that's my main thing. I think there's good science in Spain, but from what I've talked to people, more investment would really, really help the situation. But there's wonderful scientists who, even with resources much less than the top labs in the US, for example, are still doing incredible science. Just me reviewing these candidates, the finalists, I'm so impressed with the incredible science going on here. I think people have to give concrete examples. I don't know if you've heard of CRISPR. This is a technology that's revolutionizing medicine. It's a way to very precisely cut DNA and religate the way you want it, which will, in principle, be a cure to curing any genetic disease, really. And it's still the first clinical trials in humans is going on now. Some are successful. Sickle cell anemia seems to be something that really benefits from this technology. And if you look at how CRISPR technology was formed, it's actually a mechanism that viruses that infect not us but bacteria, that's where the technology came from. So if I told you initially, I want to study viruses that infect bacteria, right? Most people would say, what good is that? Why would you do this? Why am I going to spend my money helping you understand how viruses infect bacteria? But from that basic science technology, one of the greatest revolutions in biotechnology, which, billions of dollars of biotech companies now being invested in, all came from. So we need to tell people these examples, which highlight that small amounts of basic science investment can give rise to very large benefits. That's a very active area of research. There's actually, I don't remember the numbers, but there's some research trying to calculate what's the maximum theoretical age. The number doesn't matter because people are arguing if that's true or not. But I think people who study aging really focus on healthy aging. It's not that we want people to become old and stay alive for decades. So aging can be defined in different ways, and the critical thing is healthy aging. So it doesn't just translate into longevity, people living longer. It just makes you healthier longer, which means you rely on healthcare much later in life. And there's tremendous amount of interest in this research from all different angles, and it is an incredibly interesting field of research for sure. There's so many ways to study this. As I said, there's one aspect called telomeres, which is where your chromosomes ends are protected from being damaged. And a lot of people have a lot of experiments being done to show that if you that mechanism controls aging of cells, that they deteriorate. But you can also think of aging as regeneration. As you get older, your knees start hurting because the cartilage is not being regenerated. And so you have stem cells, you have various ways to keep your tissues young, if you will. I even think of our studies in pain related to aging. If you really look around, pain is most prevalent with increased age. And we don't understand exactly how this relates to damage, etc. But they're all related studies. So from the cell to the tissue level, all related. I think everyone builds on different studies, right? So, when I came into this work, as I said, people had already known that these molecules exist, but their identity was not known. So my lab helped find the identity of these molecules. I think next is to use them to see how we can use them to better human health, right? So now we're developing potentially drugs against them to helping us pain and other indications. And so, technology changes so much that the study of biology, unlike maybe other fields, every 20 years the tools that we use is completely different. So I think it's just more of the, so you do your work based on what was done before, and you just extend it and create new ways of looking at it, and we understand it more precisely at a more global level. We used to study one gene at a time, one cell at a time. Now we can look at, in the brain for example, every single cell, what it's doing at the same time. So we couldn't do this without people studying one cell at a time. And so technology is exploding and enables people to expand and look at things more deeply.